sure you all know our guest tonight, Garrett from Born to Be Rad. This guy, like I had said earlier, quite possibly the most positive person on the internet. You know, we live in a world now that's just laden with people taking the easy route to kind of neg on something and just be a little down on it. And one thing that I love about every time, you know, I check out Garrett's channel, it's always something positive. It's always something that lifts me up. And I feel like that's a reason why he's got such a great following that he's built up, you know, since starting the whole YouTube journey. And yeah, it's refreshing and really cool. So yeah, guys, without any further holdup, let's get on our guy Garrett from Born to Be Rad. How you doing tonight, man?
What's up, dude? What a cool intro that was. Talking about the positivity, I love it. The ratitude, I love it. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's you know, I think it could be easy to like, you know, get distracted by the negative things either in your life or just people always talking shit. So it's always a relief to check out your channel. I love the other week when you had like we need to talk about Dead Pit live. And everyone's like, oh, what's going on?
People were like lining up in that chat being like waiting for it to drop, and I had to kind of swing it. And it was basically just a big ploy to get people to go sub to them so they'd hit their 10K, and they did it that night. So
hell yeah.
You guys rock that watch the show and you know, play along with my antics. So it worked, and they hit their 10K. So it was effective, put it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You put the freshest bait on the hook and all the fishies came running for it. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's so, I would imagine that part of that probably comes from, I mean, have you always kind of been that sort of way? Have you always been, you know, relatively like bubbly and positive? Because, you know, before the show started, we were talking about, you know, all the different kinds of, you know, music we're into. And you were talking about sort of being a chameleon going from like scene to scene. So is that something where it's just like you found something to love about all of those different things? Or is this, you know?
It's interesting, man. You know, I think when it started as a kid, it was just kind of like what was popular at the time, like what I heard on the radio. So like as a little kid, and this is going to kind of age me here, is, you know, things like New Kids on the Block, MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice. I mean, Milli Vanilli, like these were the big acts that when I was a little kid, like that's what was all over the radio. So that's what I was listening to as a kid in elementary school. That was kind of like my jam. And then obviously with my parents and my uncle, like I got a little bit into hair metal a little bit as well. So kind of back and forth between the two. Then, you know, I got into middle school, and that's when I started seeing more kids starting to do like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Megadeth. So then all of a sudden, you know, I started listening to a little bit more of that. And, you know, when it came to like the journey with the music, it just kind of changed throughout, I guess, wherever I was kind of hanging out. And I really never had a huge clique. So I was always kind of friends with everybody. So that's why I was so diverse and so much music, because I mean, I'd be hanging out with the punks over here and the hardcore kids over here. And then this group over here of the I don't know if you want to say the jocks, and they were listening to more like stuff that's on the mainstream stuff. So I mean, or hip hop. So I was kind of all over the place. I didn't really have a specific place. But as far as like the positivity and all that stuff, I mean, it was different. I mean, I think I really started to change after high school. Like when I got into college, I think that's when things really started to change for me. I almost felt like I went from kind of like, I wouldn't say, maybe you could even say a follower into like a leader. I think that's kind of where I would really say that I changed from high school into college. And it really had to do with, I think, the perception of you as a kid all the way through till you graduate. And then all of a sudden you go to a new place with nobody that knows you. And all of a sudden now you're creating a whole new, you know, aura about yourself. And then everybody looked up to me like I was, you know, the coolest person ever. Right. So like, it was just a very different dynamic. So I think what happens is you start to get more confidence. And that's where I think that, you know, the leader thing really came up. And, you know, I don't like drama. So like, I always kind of keep things positive as I can. But you know, drama's everywhere. So you just got to kind of either just, you know, ignore it. But again, sometimes it's hard not to. It's like you said, it's everywhere, man. Negativity, drama. But you just gotta do your best to kind of, you know, just be above all that.
Sure. Yeah. And there's certainly things in life where it's like, yeah, sometimes shit gets real and you do have to just sort of deal with it. But it's also that can be spun into a positive of like, well, when stuff gets uncomfortable, I'm going to face it and I'm going to get through it and things are going to be better on the other side of that experience, right?
Mhm.
Now, and you also you do, you know, for work, you're a personal trainer, you do like fitness and everything like that?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time personal trainer. I train anybody from like today I trained a couple kids that were 10, and then I have clients that are in their 70s, right? So it's a large array of
Mhm.
people, athletes. I kind of call all my clients athletes, but people that are actually playing sports, people that aren't. I do
Mhm.
online coaching, so I do programming for people, that live anywhere from Ireland to India to the United States,
Wow.
wherever. And I'll do stuff online too. So it's kind of like my own little business on the side, then full time, training at a facility. So I'm busy, but
Yeah.
I love what I do. So it's hard to really, say it's a job, I guess. But it's just the hardest thing is sometimes it's just long hours. Like that's the big thing. It's
Mhm.
it's it's kind of long hours, and I'm always busy and I'm always on my feet. And sometimes it's hard to even just sit down and you know do this kind of stuff. Like I'm sure
Sure.
start a YouTube channel. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna do it for fun, and all of a sudden it gains momentum, and you're like, okay, this is kind of turning into a part-time gig now, and
Yeah.
you got to find time for that, right? So like,
Yep.
I wish I had a job sometimes where, I did have opportunities to be at a desk for a couple hours because then I could like do some of that stuff, do some of this stuff. So I'm trying to fit it all in like after hours, which sometimes it gets a little bit harder. But I was just gonna say that is that
That's great.
I was gonna say I'm changing. I'm changing. No more Mr. Nice
Yeah.
Guy. That's it.
About those
Um,
dead pit guys.
but I keep this attitude. But again, it's one of those things that I guess you don't want to. I don't want to get to that other level kind of thing. So I'm just gonna take.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I would imagine like doing the personal training and being in good shape and, helping other people find that motivation and, get on a new track like that just is going to breed more of that positive
Mhm.
attitude. Like you can't do that kind of work
Right.
if you're like, all right, guys, you know, I drank
100%. That's
I
exactly it.
drank
I
10
can't.
beers last night. I don't care what I'm doing.
Right. Like I have to be positive because a lot of people are coming to me that don't feel great about themselves or that
Sure.
are in a bad space, and I have to be the one to kind of be able to pull them out of that, right? So I have to
Hmm.
have that more of a positive attitude because
Yeah.
people are paying me or relying on me to bring them to the next level. So
Hmm. Absolutely. And now you started your YouTube channel. Was it right around, I believe I remember you saying something like right around the pandemic time. Is that
it
when you
was
got
the end
rolling with
end of
everything?
2020. Yeah, end of 2020 is when I think my first video was the Friday the 13th box set from Scream Factory, so that had to have been like October, November of 2020.
Okay.
Mm.
And so, man, you're, amassed quite an awesome following here. It's not only just what you do on your own channel is really cool, but everything you do with the Rad Pack and collaborations all over the place. So it's got to be, like you said, you take that leadership role and you've brought it right on over here to YouTube, which is just incredible. So how do you manage the time? Because I can't like I'm like, dude, this guy. Do you even sleep?
I do, but it's gotten worse, obviously. And, I get through points where I'm like gung ho, but then I think to myself, all right, I got to pull it back a little bit. Just
Hmm.
because, again, my health's important too. And, the problem is now, I think, is that I've got so many ideas and so many other things going on. Like, for instance, I like to still be a guest on other shows because it just
Yeah.
changes it up for me. Like, I don't have to be the
Hmm.
person that's setting everything up, whatever. I have the podcast now with the Rad Pack. I do stuff. I try to do stuff with Cody once a month or every other month for the Rad Dudes. I'm doing something with Fachi with the Radsman. I got Dead Pit to do stuff. You know what I mean? So like now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like I've got so much going on that I want to be available for everybody, but it's hard,
Hmm.
especially when I have my own stuff to worry about. So that's the toughest part is to try to be available to kind of
Yeah.
make everything work, and that's I think what's become the hardest is just to try to make that all happen because even with the Rad Pack, like we're doing at least one show a month, but we're hoping to do more. But sometimes it's hard because there's only specific nights out of the week that I can even record just due to work and whatnot. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's the hardest part is just to managing it. But it's it has its even flows, I think.
Yeah. And even finding the balance with like family life and all that, because that, obviously that's really important too. So I think that's one of those things, that I'm still learning. I'm just barely over a year into the journey. And it's like, yeah, like you push on the gas a little bit and then you're like, whoa, all right, maybe
Mhm.
not so much there.
Yeah,
But
that's hard too.
it can be addicting. I mean, that's kind of the way I feel about it sometimes. Like you do a couple videos and they either hit or they just the process of making them went well, and so you're like, all right, well, I
Mhm.
found the next level. Like this is it now. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, 100%. There was a period of time recently where this might actually be the first week it doesn't happen. I'm gonna see if I can make it happen, but one random Saturday, I dropped like a early morning show. I was away that weekend, so I was like, I'm gonna record something, drop it on Saturday because I'll be away for the weekend, so it'll kind of hold my channel over for a couple days. And it did really well on a Saturday morning, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like I've never really dropped anything on a Saturday morning before, and it really hit. So then I was like, what, I'm going to try to do that again. So then the next week I would record something. I usually would have a guest, put it on Saturday. It did really well again. So I was like, I'm going to try to ride this wave as long as I can, because it seems like the people that are watching my content are all hanging around Saturday morning with something, like looking for something to do. But it's one of those things where like this might be the first Saturday in a couple months that I'm not going to put anything out just because I haven't had the time to record anything. Like,
Yeah.
I did a live last night. I'm here tonight. And, to be able to find a guest, come up with the idea, record, and then edit it and have it ready by Saturday it just might not happen. So again, it's one of those things, like you said, where sometimes it's hard to, to stop when you feel like something's working, but things happen, man.
Yeah, the editing, man. I think that's why I like going live so much. Is dude, the editing. Sometimes it takes like twice as long, or maybe even more, just depending on how ambitious you want to be with everything. Of course, like you could do it pretty simply, but like I find like I shoot the video and I'm like, oh crap, now I have to edit it. Oh.
Dude, that's me. 100%. That's me. Like I talk to Mel and Justin about it all the time because they don't do a lot of lives unless we're doing Rad Pack, and I'm just like, the editing kills me. Like, I did a Corey Feldman video that I was pretty happy with. I mean, at first I wasn't happy with it because I saw Justin's and I was like, damn it, he killed it. So like I wasn't really happy with mine, but then I like sent it to Mel and she's like, oh, that was really good. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I sat on that video for like 5 days before I dropped it because I was just dreading the editing process. And, maybe I was too far out of a window that I should have been in where like a lot of stuff was being talked about him at that point. But that's the thing. If I go live and I do it, it's like, boom, it's done. Here we go. It is what it is. And sometimes I even feel better like live than when I'm trying to record to nobody. I feel like I make more mistakes recording than I do on a live show.
Well, and if you flub on a live, you can like kind of laugh and make fun of yourself. And then I get the same thing too, where it's like staring into a camera, just pretending there's, I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of people back there. Just act like they're there, and yeah, you get totally, there's sometimes where I'm like, why can't I say that sentence? Like, why does this word sound weird? Like, and I start swearing to myself and my wife is like, you okay?
Now you said you talk a lot for work. Like, are you in front of a lot of people when you speak at work?
Well, I sell insurance, so I'm always on the phone calling people, and I'm just a friggin' like talk box. I was the 5th out of 5 kids in my family, a very talkative, loud family, so I had to be like extra loud and everything just to get attention as a kid. So, yeah, sometimes there are people that are like, man, you sure do talk a lot. So I guess YouTube is just, tailor-made.
Well, that's how I kind of feel too, is that's why I wonder if that's why we feel so much more comfortable on a live, because we interact with people face to face all day, right? So it's like it makes life easy than if we were stuck behind a cubicle and didn't talk to anybody for 8 hours every day, came on here and tried to have a conversation to people on a chat. Like, it might be a little bit different, right? So I think that that helps for sure.
And it's also like, I don't know if you feel this way, the mental health aspect of like what I get from the community and the audience members, the collaborators, like, the content creators, everyone in the community. And sometimes like hopping on a live and on a difficult day or something, like it just makes me, I can shed like all the nonsense and just come in here and like feel like I'm kicking it with, people who have become my friends. So, especially taking a big, like I used to play music and then took a big break from doing anything outwardly creative. Now jumping into this, I'm like, man, I feel so much like better about everything because of everyone here. So thank you guys.
I 100% agree.
And we were talking about, I have my cool little Megadeth headband here that I showed you showed everyone there.
Oh yeah.
And we were chit-chatting a little bit about that because, you know, you and I are 80s kids. I mean, of course, 90s as well. But, you know, we were talking about that little bit of friction, or maybe like a, you know, pick a side kind of thing, like the whole Metallica Megadeth debate. And, you know, when that sort of started taking shape, that's a reference for Vinny there, taking shape. But you know, when did you? So obviously, you know, most of us probably heard Metallica first, right? When was there a time where you were like, "What the heck is this Megadeth band?" And like, what's going on with these guys? With you know, finding out that, you know, one of the members went and created this other band.
Yeah, it was definitely middle school, and it was like I might have been in 6th grade, and I saw a lot of like 8th graders walking around with like jean jackets with like Metallica patches on the back, or like t-shirts of like Megadeth t-shirts, Pantera t-shirts. These are all like, you know, with the crazy fonts and stuff. Like I had never seen anything like that before. You know, going into middle school and seeing these kids that are a couple of years older, like just all wearing black with like these crazy logos on it. I'm like, what is this? And you know, you have, I think it was like a Megadeth shirt where the guy was getting like electrocuted on the thing, and you being like, whoa, and there was a lot of skulls and all that stuff, and these kids walking around with a Pantera shirt with this guy getting punched in the face, and you're like, what is this world, right? So that's when I started to kind of like get curious about that kind of stuff, was in middle school. And I can remember it was always one of those things like, oh, are you into Metallica or Megadeth? And I think Metallica had to have been like probably, I'm thinking Enter Sandman probably had to have been the first Metallica song I probably heard. And I'm thinking Countdown to Extinction had to have been the first Megadeth album I probably heard as well. So I don't know the dates, but they probably might be pretty close in the dates. It's got to be early 90s, right?
Yeah, I would say, I think the Black Album and Countdown were both like 92, something like that.
So that was like my first introduction to them. And you know, I liked them both at the time. Is a lot of Metallica for sure. And then I was listening to Metallica a lot, but then after, like, you know, when Load came out, it like things were a little bit different. And then Reload, I after Load, I think I kind of really got out of them. So I don't know anything past, like, I think the last album I ever bought was like the S&M one, and then I haven't even listened to them since then, like any of that new stuff at all. But going back to the battles where you had the groups of friends that you like, Metallica or Megadeth, let me ask you this, because I'm wondering if it's everywhere. Do you remember another two bands that were big around that, maybe in middle school, but a couple years later, that it was the same thing? Are you this team this or this team this? Do you have an idea of this? Two bands that came out a couple of years after that was like, it was a war, man. It was like, what do you team, this or this? And I'm gonna, if I say it, you'll probably agree with me.
Yeah, I'm totally blanking right now.
All right, so when I was in 8th grade, the big thing was, are you Green Day or Offspring? That was the big battle.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, in my tiny town, I felt like I was the only kid listening to skate punk, or me and like three of the skater kids. Team Green Day all day, right? I mean, in that era, oh my gosh,
Green Day. And you know what? Jamie said it made a good point. Pearl Jam and Nirvana was another one. I'm probably thinking like Metallica, Megadeth was like 6th grade, Nirvana, Pearl Jam was 7th, and Green Day, Metallica, and Offspring was 8th. But yeah, it was a wild time back then, because it was a lot of like this or that type of thing. You know, being in middle school, it was always like you this or that.
Yep, exactly. Like pick a side. They're trying to you know, condition you for the future. You have to pick. You can't be in the middle. You can't have your own opinion. You just need to pick one of these two things.
You'd walk in with like an Offspring shirt, and they said, "You said Green Day the other day."
Yeah.
No, like, well,
and it was funny because, like, you know, Offspring. So, you know, Green Day went really big after they left Lookout Records, and they, you know, signed to Geffen and everything, and were just massive, right? And then Offspring was still on Epitaph when they broke. But what's odd is I felt like all the other Epitaph records music was a lot edgier. Like Offspring was relatively poppy for what was on that lineup at that time. Like comparing it to like Bad Religion and Pennywise and NoFX, like Offspring seems, you know, like to me, I'm like, oh, it's no wonder they broke on MTV, because they write songs that are like catchy, memorable singles, you know?
Yeah, it was funny because they still kind of like fell in that genre, because I remember when Smash came out, that was the big hit. But then I remember going back and I got the album that came out before that, which I wasn't aware of. I think it was like, what was it, Ignite or no?
Ignition.
Yeah. That was a great album. That was a fantastic
album. Rips. Yes.
And then I remember maybe like a year or two later getting like, remember Punk-O-Rama, those CDs?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was always like NoFX. That's where I got introduced to a lot of those bands. NoFX, Bad Religion, all those bands were on there. But then you'd still have Offspring on there as well. Yeah. And at that point, they had already kind of broke. And then you're seeing all these other bands as part of this cult, like compilation. You're like, oh, cool. Like they're kind of like this. And that's what my introduction to some of those skate punk bands where I became a huge Pennywise fan from that album. I ended up getting all their stuff after that.
Yeah, it's funny. I just recently like listened to some Offspring and I was like, man, these guys, Pennywise and Offspring sound a lot more alike than I remember as a kid. And it's probably just Dexter's voice versus Jim's voice, because Dexter's got, you know, I guess you can call it maybe an acquired taste. It's just a little bit of a different voice. But I think that's, again, another thing that if it helps you stand out, then you can, you know, write a bunch of hit songs. But yeah, I mean, by the time, I think Ixnay on the Ombre was like the last Offspring that I really followed. And then once they're doing like Pretty Fly for a White Guy, I'm like, well, this is fun. But it sounds like a Weird Al song, which, like, don't get me wrong, I love Weird Al. I was just sort of like, what happened to the Offspring?
But that's exactly when I fell out of Offspring as well. The last album I had was the one that you said. I think it was black with like a skeleton on the front or something. That was the last album I ever bought from Offspring. So I didn't get into them after that one, like Pretty Fly for White Guy. I heard the song, but I really wasn't listening to them at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a fun time back then where you had all these bands like that. But I saw somebody in the chat. Oh, they brought up Rancid. So Rancid was another band I was really heavily into. And I think I talked about this before we went on the show. My brother just went to go see Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins. They came around here. And he sent me a video and Rancid opened. They were the first band. And I'm like, what? Rancid's there? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, shit, I would have went just to see them. Like, because I was really big into Rancid as around that time.
Yeah. That was, I think, the first CD I ever like bought with my own money, because I got a CD player for Christmas. It was like 94, and my parents got me Nirvana Unplugged, and then the Smashing Pumpkins B-side album, Pisces Iscariot. Like, they got me those. But the first CD I ever purchased was Let's Go by Rancid, and it had the Roots Radicals single like attached to it.
It was on a separate disc, right?
Yeah, with I Wanna Riot, I think was the other song on there with a different version of Roots Radicals than the one that would be on and Out Come the Wolves. But yeah, man, Rancid is a lot of fun. Did you know that Billy Joe Armstrong was almost in Rancid, like this close to being a member?
I didn't know that.
So he wrote Radio with Tim, and then, like, you know, Green Day hadn't broken yet, or they were, I think maybe Kurt Plunk's tour just wrapped up or something, and Operation Ivy was broken up, and Tim asked Billy Joe to join, and he was just too busy doing Green Day, so it didn't work out. But that's a weird, like, what if, but awesome, like, you know, that whole Berkeley scene, like the, you know, Big Rod had brought it up with Rancid, the, you know, Operation Ivy. I don't know if you're a big Ivy guy. Like, I
don't know how many albums they had. I had that one.
The one
they had, I had that.
I think they had like a full length and then a couple 7-inches that they just put together as that one CD. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had that. Then I got Let's Go, and then obviously the big one for them, which was what was that one called? With Time Bomb and all that on there. The big Rancid album. That was
And Out Come the Wolves.
Oh yeah, that was probably the last one I had gotten from them. Whatever. I think there was also like a earlier one with like a gun or something on it. I think. Yeah,
they did a self-titled one in '93, which is really fun because they're just a 3-piece. So like Matt, the bassist, like sings half of the songs, and it's just this like totally different than anything they ever did after. But I do love a lot of those songs for sure.
Now you wonder, do you think Green Day had any pull for them to kind of get noticed? Because it seemed like they kind of came out of nowhere, and it was different, man, because, you know, you had Green Day and Offspring that was kind of like on the verge of like, oh, it's kind of punk music, it's getting popular. And then Rancid hit the scene, and all these dudes have mohawks. They're like, wait, these are the punks that I've been seeing on my movies for the last 10 years, you know, like they just had the look of like what you assumed a punk was that was in your video games or movies or whatever. I was like, no, this is the real punk stuff right here. And that's what I think kind of brought me to them, you know?
Yeah, they're like trauma punks, you know? They're like surf Nazis must die. Like, they took them right out of there, put them on stage. Yeah. Yeah, I think what it must have been, I mean, because we see this happen all the time whenever something sort of pops, like the way that, Nirvana, when they popped, it turned into this whole thing with all those Seattle bands that, followed suit, because I think the record executives are like, it's not just those guys. It's like this whole, like they have a whole scene going there. Let's find the next big thing. So yeah, I would imagine that like part of it is, Green Day and Offspring breaking. And then just the fact that like Epitaph was like, even though they were an independent label, they were able to like make good music videos and just ride that wave. Yeah. Cause I remember Time Bomb being a pretty big hit. And then Ruby Soho was giant. They were on SNL. Like, it's crazy,
Mm-hmm.
I never would have thought I'd see Rancid on SNL. I remember as a kid just being like, this is nuts,
It sure was, yeah. Good times, though.
We got Manny's Manic Media, who is a new channel member. You were gifted a channel membership on the last live stream. Manny's Manic Media says Propagandhi. Have you ever listened to Propagandhi, Garrett?
I have not, no.
Dude.
Were they on the Punkorama album or no?
So they wouldn't have been on the Punkorama, but if you followed like Fat Records, which is Fat Mike from NoFX's label, like they would be on Survival of the Fattest.
I do remember that album. So I mean, the name sounds familiar. I just can't pin a song or anything like that.
What's incredible about Propagandhi is they are literally a progressive band in that when they first started, it sounded a lot like NoFX, and they just slowly started getting more metal and more metal. And now they're at this point where like, to me, they're like the riffage is really similar to something like Megadeth. So it's kind of like a throwback, but they're really just like intense. They're pretty political, but they're kind of apolitical. It's not like a vote for this person, vote for that person. They're vegan and they're very like staunch in their beliefs. And while I don't agree with every single thing they say, I'd rather listen to somebody write some lyrics that mean something,
For sure.
But they're really cool. If the next time you're looking for something to, you're like, I need something to fuel my workout, put on
Propaganda. I will. I'll check it out.
Or even, have you heard Paint It Black? You like hardcore. Have you heard Paint It Black from Philly?
No.
They're like early 2000s is when they came out. I'll share their shit with you too, because that's really good stuff. Really posy kind of hardcore too.
Definitely.
Now, let's see here. Where are we? We're about 15 minutes away from me giving away some channel memberships. So get ready for that. That's gonna be fun. We got John Doe Juggalo in the chat. What's happening, John Doe? Love to see the rad dude on late night. Oh yeah. Totally tubular. Big Rod says, anyone ever heard of Voodoo Glow Skulls?
I do remember them. It was ska, right?
Yeah, like wild ska. My band actually got to open up for them in Bend, Oregon, like whenever that was, 15 years ago. In a past life,
That's sick.
Favorite motivational workout album is Perseverance by Hatebreed. Man, I know that band name, and I can picture the logo. It's like it almost reminds me of like a skate brand logo or something like that with a fire all over it. Yeah. I'm not too familiar with their music. Are you a fan?
Well, funny story. So yeah, Hatebreed was actually the album. I'm trying to think what the name of the album would have been now. Countdown to Extinction, I think. No. That's not right. Well, their album that came out in like 97. That's the album. That's the band that got me into more of the hardcore scene. That was the band right there. And what's crazy is that album Perseverance is fantastic. And I actually was in the music video for Hatebreed's I Will Be Heard. So if you go check out that video, if you check out that video, it was on, it was all over MTV and stuff. And they filmed it local to me. And there was cameras. They're like, oh, guys, going to be cameras here. Do your thing. And we're going to take footage. And when it came out, I remember my friend messaging me. He's like, dude, you're in the pit like 3 times. Like, and there's 2 good shots. You can see me where I throw like a side kick or whatever like that. So if you guys check out the Hatebreed I Will Be Heard video, I'm there. I've got like a white hat. I've got like a choker shell like necklace on with like a polo shirt that's got like white stripes on it. So take a gander at that. But yeah, Hatebreed, All Satisfaction, The Death of Desire. That is the one. Yeah. Great band. I mean, they're to me like the hardcore band that like made it to the tippy top of like how high one of those bands that I know have gotten. Like they're so well known in the metal scene. I think Jamie Josta, who is their singer, has got his own podcast now. I think he's got his own label now. So he really made a big name for himself. So it's pretty impressive.
Are they from your neck of the woods?
Yeah, they're from, I believe, Connecticut, I think.
Okay. Hey,
So-
you know what? Technically, I'm from Connecticut because I was born in Groton.
Ooh, look at that. See that? Northeast, baby.
Never been back. I lived there for about 2 months. My dad was in the Coast Guard, so we were always moving around. So I was only there for like 2 months, and I've never been back. I've got to get back.
Now you're Mr. Phoenix.
Yeah, I know. I miss the East Coast though. Every time I go out to the East Coast, you know, we have family friends that are from out there. My family spent like a lot of my siblings grew up in like Bowie, Maryland, and Governor's Island in New York, which is now shut down. I think they just use the island as a dump now. But not so much moving around when I came around, but anytime I got to go back to the East Coast, like I've always had a great time hanging out in Maryland. You know, Philly's really great. I mean, talk about an amazing music scene. I mean, Philly's just bonkers. I love a lot of music from New Jersey. Like I'm a big Lifetime is one of my favorite bands of all time. And then I'm a big Saves the Day guy. You ever get into Saves the Day? When you're in your emo phase? Yeah, there you go. Stay what you are, through being cool.
Yeah. I that's the only album I really know. I have that one. But again, it was a weird transition. Like I got into the emo phase, and I think it was around the time of probably the early 2000s. I had gotten a job at Abercrombie, and that's all the shit they used to play all the day. So then I started hanging out with people that worked there. And then in college, that was what everybody was listening to. So then, you know, you go to parties a lot, and that's what would be on. And I really got into that. And then it kind of turned into more of like the screamo stuff. And then I started to go to the concerts and the shows and watching like bands like, you know, obviously Taking Back Sunday was big at the time, Brand New, The Used, Dashboard, like all those bands that were kind of coming out around that. Then you'd always have those spin-off bands that were gotten heavy into like, you know, I don't even know what you'd call it. Like I love the, you know, Seosin, like I love them. Like they were all, these are all branches of like the emo genre that kind of went different ways. A Skylit Drive was another band that I like absolutely love, and you know, they were a lot heavier, but it still had the same kind of like emo lyrics, but now all of a sudden you're getting that hardcore-ish music to like emo lyrics. So it was like a weird thing, and I really was into that stuff where there was breakdowns, but then there was like these sing-along choruses that everybody could be part of. And that's, I think, got me into that genre. Is it's like, hey, it's what I like about this. It's heavy, we can rock out to it, there's a pit, but then everybody can, you know, they have these grand choruses that everybody sings along, and I always found that genre really cool.
That was one of the things that like I hear, like that band Lifetime I brought up. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
are they straight edge or no?
They're not straight edge. They're at least I don't think they are.
Because I remember a band X Lifetime X, so I guess it's probably not them.
That must be a different one. Yeah. And Lifetime, you know, they were like mid 90s. They had broken up by like 97. But all that, like they did the big breakdown thing. So they'd have like a 2.5 minute song, and most of it's like really fast kind of skate punk. And then they'd bring on this epic breakdown. And I've always felt like bands like Saves the Day and Taking Back Sunday and, you know, even Newfound Glory, like took a lot of those elements, they smoothed them out and made them a bit more accessible for sure. But I'm right there with you as far as like just really digging that, like give me some brutality, give me some like melody, of course, but I want it to feel like, you know, that it's passionate, it's coming from the heart, and that it's maybe a little like, give me something unexpected, you know? I think like Seosin's a good one.
Yeah, that, dude, I mean, that album, I don't even know what that's called, Seosin, with the Beatle on it or whatever. I mean, I still listen to that album on a regular now.
Yeah.
Still fantastic. And I see somebody in here talk about Killswitch Engage. Like, to me, that's another band, in my opinion, that's like, when they got Howard there, like, it just, that they were on another level of like, in my opinion, like of an like just almost like a perfect band. With his voice and how heavy it was, but then you had all those choruses, and I mean, that's a band that I've seen countless times. I haven't seen him since he left though, so I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can sort of like, there are some of these bands that I used to watch like every year. I would fly down from Alaska just to like go to Seattle just to watch music, that kind of thing. And then,
Wow.
you enter a different part of your life and you're like, oh geez, it's been a while since I've seen those guys. Or yeah, would Living Color or Kill Switch Engage, they're pretty different. I guess I would go Living Color because I'm more familiar with their work.
Also, were you not into Kill Switch at all?
I'm just not like, I've heard songs here or there, but I've
Oh,
never
man.
taken like what I need to do, because music is like it's what drives me. It's my favorite art form and everything. I need to do that dive where I just like start out with that, whatever album you recommend I start with, and then sort of like circle
Oh
around
yeah,
from there.
I think that you'd really dig them a lot. I think they kind of hit every angle, and I think it worked great. I mean, they're still killing it, but I know so they had a singer at first that left, and Howard came in, and then he left, and the old singer came back. So there's been a lot of changes with them, but still, no matter what, great band for sure.
And what record do you recommend I start with?
End of Heartache, I think that's what it was called.
Cool.
That was a song, but I think that might have been the name of the album as well. I can check really quick.
I got it brought up. I'll be able to check it out. Yeah.
Whatever. That's the song on it. I think that's the name of the album too. But let me see. It's called.
People always bring them up. Like I hear a lot of people talking good about Kill Switch Engage, so it's about time.
Yeah, I think you're gonna really like it. Yeah, End of Heartache came out in 2004. I would listen to that, and then As Daylight Dies was the big follow up in 2006. And then if you like that, if you go backwards to 2002, I think that's where they had the old singer, but that's still a really good album too. And to be honest, I think all their stuff is really good. But I would probably start at End of Heartache. Just check that out. Yeah, that was Howard's first album. Yeah.
It's a wild thing when a band pulls that off, like switching singers. That's a pretty risky move, right? You're kind of taking a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, even didn't Seosin end up doing that after Anthony Green left?
Yeah, oh yeah, they did, because then they redid, I think, some of the big songs that they had at that time.
Yeah.
Now I don't know though. Was it before that album came out? Because that was a big album, the one that I was talking about. And did that come out after the singer left, or did they finish that and then they got someone? I don't remember.
They did. So they did. Translating the Name was released, and then Green left the band, and Cove took over after that. But Anthony Green, man, that guy's voice is pretty incredible. And that Circa Survive band he did after he left Seosin, their stuff's really fun too. Kind of little experimental, little like kind of some progressive elements going, but still like, grounded and catchy. But different, I like that.
It's cool talking some music here.
Yeah, we don't get seriously. Isn't it so tough to talk about it on like I feel blessed that the people in the chat know what we're talking about, and you and I can at least go back and forth, because it is really difficult. Like I would love to do album reviews on YouTube, but how the hell do you really do it? Like you'd have to chop up the song so much that people wouldn't even be able to tell what you're really trying to praise, There's a couple people that do it, but it's you sort of have to know the record, it's but it's always been such a huge part of, like, music has been such a big part of my life, just like movies. It's the two to me seem so similar because they're both kind of like circus shows in a way. Sometimes the most popular bands, you're like, are they the most popular just because there's like something flashy about them? Like, is it really substance? And then I think sometimes with movies, I start to feel the same way, where I'm like, man, I really loved Marvel when they first kicked things off. And then just like a good band, just like Green Day we were talking about earlier, you love the first like handful of albums, and then you're like, wait a minute, did I outgrow them? Did they outgrow me? Or is it just not as good as it used to be? Or is it somewhere in between?
Totally agree with that. I actually am kind of mad at myself because, since podcasts and stuff came out, and I don't listen to music like I used to, I just don't. Like, it was such a huge part of my life, growing up. Like, I would sit in my room and, if even I was playing video games or whatever I was doing, you'd have music on the background, always CDs, and I would go CD shopping the way I go movie shopping. Now it was a weekly thing. We used to go up to Boston and go to like these like underground places to get all these like hardcore albums and all these albums you couldn't get at the regular stores. And you know, I don't know a lot of modern music. The only time I listen to music now is at work because we play music all day, and it's cool because I can always change it up. So like for instance, the other day I threw on the Seosin album for like a couple hours because it's like we have the freedom to do that, which is cool. But I don't really hear a lot of new stuff anymore. So I don't know what's out there. I saw somebody earlier mention some bands, and you're like, I don't know any of those bands. I didn't know any of those bands either, you know, because to me, I thought the scene was gone. Like, I didn't even know like there was even like rock music anymore. Like, because you only hear hip hop and pop. Like, country around here seems like it took over for what rock or metal was. Like, I mean, when I was growing up, what was on the radio? Marilyn Manson, like, you know, Tool, Korn, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, like all these bands were like live. All these bands were on MTV, on the radio. I don't ever see anything like that anymore. Or you don't hear about these bands that are getting popular in that genre. You watch music awards, there's not a lot of rock bands anymore. No. It's all hip hop and pop, and it's like, wow, where did this genre go? I guess it's a little bit more underground now.
It is odd. It's done a total flip. Like anytime, you know, I'm a big sports guy, so anytime I watch like any sports, all the music they play, like in between commercial break or going to and coming back, it's always some like hip hop song or pop song that I'm just like, I have no idea what this is. I'm so lost right now. Like, and it sounds so like, there's something like inorganic about it, like a lot of like layered effects and stuff like that, which I get like on one level can sound really cool. Like you're playing with the voice and all that kind of stuff. But then, you know, maybe it's a generational thing. And for somebody like me, I'm just like, well, I don't know if auto-tune really is a selling point for me. You know,
you do start to feel a little bit old when you don't pay attention and you don't care about a lot of the new stuff. Like some people will ask me all the time about music, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like even if you ask me right now, tell you 3 Taylor Swift songs, dude, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it either. And like think about that. Like she's literally like the biggest star in the world, and I could not give you 3 songs from her.
I don't think I can name 3. I don't think I could sing a song of hers. And yeah, I guess that's one thing too about like, I don't have any kids. So there are people our age that have kids that are in high school. And so that, you know, it sort of helps them keep up with like all that kind of stuff. I think that's the only way to like stay hip. Did the kids still say hip? Did hip come back?
Hip is not hip anymore.
It's not. It hasn't been hip since forever.
It's crazy, man. I feel weird about it because I feel like I'm what my dad was, like in a sense. Like he was very into music. He was Beatles, Led Zeppelin and stuff. And then I remember when Rancid came out, he basically laughed in my face on how ridiculous this was, right? So like I almost am starting to feel like that when it comes to some of the new stuff that's out there. I'm like, this is junk, you know? And I'm like, wait, no, I sound like my father, you know? Yeah. And I used to get so upset when he would say stuff like that to me.
Well, and I get it. Like comparing the Beatles to Rancid, like that's a pretty big difference. Led Zeppelin to Rancid isn't as much of a difference, right? I mean, I love Led Zeppelin's music, but let's be honest, most of Robert Plant's lyrics are like, baby, baby, baby. Like it's just like it's.
I think for my father, he's a guitarist, so I think everything to him had to do with the way that it was played. You know, I think he was big into Hendrix and all that stuff. So I think that's kind of where his thing was. He would listen to it, and if it sounded more like it belonged in a garage, he'd be like, oh, that belongs in the, you know, like that's kind of I think what his mindset was. But it's wild because like I said, I feel like sometimes when I don't know what the heck's going on, I'm like, man, I'm starting to feel and sound old here.
Yeah. And I guess that's why another reason why like gravitating towards movies is a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to keep up on that kind of stuff. And because the people that are making movies are, you know, there's plenty of people around our age making movies, that we are seeing a return of some of these like stylistic points. You know, I had mentioned Thanksgiving earlier. Like I really love that movie because it reminded me of 80s slashers that is kind of a lost genre a little bit. I know a lot of people said it was like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, but I feel like it was a little bit more like The Prowler and My Bloody Valentine, just that it has to do with like revenge and the whodunit element. But yeah,
it's good to hear that because I actually really did like Thanksgiving as well, and I'm very, very picky on movies, especially modern, like because I'm so, you know, my whole life has been around these movies that came out in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and you know, a lot of these movies now, it's almost like I'm at a point where I feel like mediocrity is like good now. So I'm kind of like, and it comes like to that with everything. I'm almost like win me over, or do something that's gonna win me over here. I'm not gonna just settle for like half-ass shit and be like, oh, it's fine, like it's great. And because the expectations now, I feel like have gotten really low. But I feel like I was actually very impressed with Thanksgiving, as much as I would have rather probably had it the way it was originally shot, like a more of a grindhousey way. I actually did like it a lot, and I'm hoping for a sequel. And I really, really like it. And I'm meeting Eli Roth in a couple weeks, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I buy a Cabin Fever poster and have him sign it, or do I bring this Thanksgiving poster that I have him sign it? So the fact that that's what I want to do, it just shows that I really liked how that movie ended up coming out.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like sometimes I watch a movie and I'm like, man, did I overhype myself up for it? I'm a huge Evil Dead fan. It's one of my favorite franchises, and from what I saw in the trailer from Rise, I was like, oh man, if they're showing that in the trailer, I'd like the movie's just going to be like totally bonkers, because the 2013 Evil Dead just like really took it to the next level. And then, I watched Rise, and afterwards I was like, man, am I a jerk that I like just thought that was like good but not great? And then
Rise is interesting because I was lucky enough to, we've only done it once. We did our Rad Pack meetup 2 years ago, and we went to a film fest, and we had an early screening of Rise. So, we saw it a week before anybody else or whatever. So it was a cool environment, right? So, people were going crazy. And after we saw it, we're like, holy shit, that was awesome, blah, blah, blah. And then I got it again, and I watched it for a second time, and I'm like, I think I was just really in the moment, and like everybody's cheering and stuff because it was an event for that. But then going home and watching it again, I was like, yeah, that wasn't as good as I remember it being. So
yeah, it was good, and it was, I guess, like I felt like it walked up to the line and didn't really go beyond it. And that's what I like with Evil Dead. I'm just sort of like, give me, every time you put out a movie, give me a little bit more crazy. Like I want to see, because I always just think like, pushing the limit is synonymous with Evil Dead. So I know a lot of people out there are like, oh, I want, I've heard plenty of people be like, Damien Leone doing a Friday the 13th movie. I know it's something that he would like to do. Like, I would like to see that guy do an Evil Dead film. Like, to me, that's like catered to what he does with Art the Clown, but to be able to do it with some different kind of supernatural thing. But, with Thanksgiving, I just didn't have many expectations. I saw the trailer and was like, wow, that actually, like, I like the look of the killer. Okay, this looks exciting. And sat down and was totally blown away. Like, maybe too much, because most other people are like, yeah, it was fine. And then, of course, I turn around and watch Abigail, and I'm like, yeah, it was good.
So what did you think of Abigail? Because it seems like everybody's loved it. I bought it. I haven't watched it yet, though.
Like, I thought it was fine. So everyone was like, they shouldn't have given away that she's a vampire in the trailer. I'm cool with that. Like, I don't think that ruins the movie. I think that's a good hook to get people to show up and watch the movie. Because there's plenty else in the movie to learn about and experience. What I thought was odd is you let us know that, and then there's seriously like 35 minutes before it really starts getting to the action. And I thought that was like, look, if you're going to tell us that she's a vampire in the trailer, like 25 minutes in, let's have a kill. Let's get going, And then I think the movie was like an hour 45, and the end, I was just like, okay, you're revealing a new thing to me. And then I was like, okay. It felt like they asked a lot. Sort of like I've heard people saying that about Trapped, where people are like, I liked the idea of Trapped, and then it just felt like there was a lot of conveniences and they were asking a lot of the audience. And
yeah, I mean, I was hoping to see Trapped last week. It kind of fell through. I was interested in it, but here's the thing: like Shyamalan's he's the same. Like his trailers always look great. His concept is good. But then I feel like there's somewhere in the movie where he's like, he doesn't know, like he gets to a point where it's like, oh shit, where do I go? Oh yeah, I got to do a twist. And then it kind of gets a little bit sloppy. And, I was hoping that wasn't going to be what we saw here, but it seems like a lot of people said, I really liked it, but there was stuff I didn't like about it. And it seems like that's kind of his MO, ever since I think Signs. I think after Signs, I think that became the MO for him is, with the village and everything else after that. It was like
Yeah.
there's good concepts there, but it doesn't, he doesn't know how to finish a movie or something like that.
Yeah, it's like J.J. Abrams has a similar thing too, where it's like really great ideas, but like it's all about like if you don't stick the landing, even if the movie's good, it'll diminish it like to some regard for sure. And I think that's my thing with the Radio Silence guys. I still haven't seen Ready or Not. Everyone tells me that's their best movie, but between their 2 Scream movies and Abigail, I'm like, man, it's like C plus. Like they're so close to getting me. And
it's
then
hard,
like
I'm assuming, because
and
Rob Zombie's the same way. I always feel like I'm like, he just doesn't know how to end a movie. Like he just, in my opinion, like I think like even like House of a Thousand Corpses, which I love, but there was a point in time where all of a sudden it just kept going, and I'm like, I don't think he knows where to end this, you know. And I feel like that's kind of been his thing too, is like he doesn't really know how to end a movie, but it seems like that's hard for a lot of people to do. So when you get someone that does it right, it's a nice finish.
yeah, it is. It's like you really appreciate it when, even if it is something as simple as Thanksgiving, like it's a satisfying experience. Like when the killer reveal was nice, like I mean, not nice, but the killer reveal was great. There's a different implement of destruction with every kill in the movie. Like, you know, just paying attention to the details. And I think like, yeah, Rob Zombie, visually, his movies look really good. Like he knows what he's doing when he's talking to a director of photography and lining up his shots. Like he knows what's up. And even some of his shots, like what is it, Lords of Salem, like
Beautiful.
you know, the what's the word that's totally slipping me because I'm on live right now.
Like the cathedral, like the big
the symmetry is just like Kubrickian. Like it's like you're watching The Shining or something, you know. It's just like beautifully shot. But yeah, dialogue and wrapping things up, like those are important storytelling elements for sure.
You almost wonder if he would be better as like to have someone else write for him and then him just kind of direct. Like you always wonder if that's probably a better thing for someone like a Rob Zombie, because you're right, like his movies look great.
Yeah, I think that's the trick. I think with Rob Zombie, it's just like, yeah, bring in somebody else. Rob, even if you want to write the first draft of the script, like bring in, you know, if you want your movie to be awesome, just bring somebody in. Like I'm a big fan. I'm one of those weirdos. Like I really like his Halloween 2 and I don't really care for the remake.
That's funny because like, but that to me feels like that's more normal now. Like I feel like a lot of people are switching to that, where I'm in the camp that that's probably my least favorite besides like Monsters. Like besides that, but
yeah.
That was honestly one of the worst theatrical experiences of my life, because I really dug his remake a lot. So when I went into the second one, at midnight, the night, like in an early showing, and the place is going nuts, and all of a sudden by the end, people are booing. I was like, man, like something's not right here. And then that kind of stuck in my head forever with that. But it seems like the more and more people now that maybe weren't there when it first came out, just to be part of that, they really are coming around on part 2, it seems like.
Yeah, I had a weird, like I watched his remake. I was doing a job. I was working this job in my hometown, Juneau, where I was working with adults with developmental disabilities. And I would like, you know, go out to movies and go get food and just try to like, you know, do something that's just like regular and just not like, you know, that's just out and about. And the one guy that I worked with the most he was awesome. He was such a movie fan. Like he and I could straight up talk about movies like in a way that I could never talk to anyone else, because he remembered all these details. So he'd be like talking to me about Rock and Roll High School Forever, and then talking to me about Halloween the next moment. And it was like, we're both going back and forth with like IMDb trivia kind of stuff. It was amazing. That's awesome. And we went and saw that remake of Halloween. And I just remembered like being like, man, this is just like really ugly. Like it's really grisly. And like, and also when I didn't even watch the sequel in the theater because I was so put off by it. And then when I sat down and finally watched it, my roommate came in after I finished it and he's like, what did you just watch? I'm like, oh, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And he's like, oh, the worst piece of shit ever. I loved his remake. And I'm just like, I really liked that one though.
Yeah, it's a lot of different takes. Like it also too has to do with kind of what you were into around that time. Like you know, Rob Zombie's movie, it was, you know, everybody talks about that beginning scene. It's like, oh my God, it was just too raunchy. It was kind of like
Mhm.
unnecessary. But for me, it was like one of those things where I feel like that's the kind of like, I was at a point when I was watching like, give me the dirtiest, goriest shit. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of like where I was at that point. So when I saw that, I was kind of just like, it didn't really affect me at all. But going
Mhm.
back and listening to it now, I'm like, yeah, this was kind of unnecessary and stupid, you know?
Yes, I think sometimes like I'm all down with like nudity and slashers and all that kind of stuff, but like, you know, like killing naked ladies, I just like I don't know, maybe I'm just like
Mhm.
it's just outside of my
Like
sensibility
he
where I'm
didn't
just
like he didn't need to, like Danielle Harris didn't need to be completely naked when he was stabbing her. Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, she's topless, and then he
Oh yeah, that's
strangles
what it
the
was.
other
Yeah,
woman while she's naked, and you
yeah.
see everything. So it's just like Rob. I mean, I get it, but like, and maybe Rob would have been maybe him doing like a Texas Chainsaw because House of a Thousand Corpses is so similar to
Very, yeah.
Texas Chainsaw that would have been a better fit like somewhere in that franchise because when I think of Halloween, I don't think of like that kind of level of brutality. But I will say this in his defense of his remake, I am a fan of when people do like when you shake it up in a franchise. Like I don't want every episode of a franchise to be the
Mhm.
same. So, maybe that's one of the reasons why I like his sequel and probably a big reason why I really like Halloween Ends because it's different.
I actually didn't mind Halloween Ends either. But you know what's funny? What I find Rob Zombie does pretty well, and especially with the Halloween. Like, I mean, when they said Rob Zombie's going to do Halloween, everybody's like, "This is insane." But and again, maybe it was just my age. Maybe it was just when I saw this. And anybody in the chat that kind of can agree or disagree, I feel like he does a pretty good job with his characters. Like, I still look at Scout Taylor Compton and say, oh yeah, Laurie Strode. I still look at Malcolm McDowell and say,
Mhm.
you know, Loomis, right? And it's so weird because like they're really just taking iconic characters, they're putting them a new person on it. But to me,
Yeah.
they still feel like Malcolm McDowell still feels like Loomis just as much
Yeah.
as you know the original one did, and same with Laurie Strode and Jamie Lee Curtis. And like for
Mhm.
some reason, like to me, they both equally to me like seem like that character, and it's really weird to think that because when I go back and think of other remakes, I don't even like Elm Street and stuff. Like I don't remember anybody's name or who the
Yeah.
actor was or whatever. So I don't know. I always thought that was kind of an interesting thing that he was very good at creating characters. I mean, look at like his rejects and corpses. Like some of those characters, like
Mhm.
Spaulding, like he's gonna go down in history as like a horror icon. You know, and
Yeah.
that's from like
Oh, yeah.
2 movies. You know, so he does a
Yeah.
really good job, I think, at building some different characters.
Well, and he hires really great actors. So even with all the ugly dialogue in that opening scene of the Halloween remake, like William Forsythe's performance is incredible. Like I can still love the performance and him saying like I'll crawl over there and skull fuck the shit out of you. And then he starts talking about the daughter, like
Yeah.
his girlfriend's daughter, like she's got a cute pooper or whatever the hell he says. Like, but the performance is great. Like, I mean, the actor didn't write the part. So yeah, I totally agree with you that when I love Scout as Laurie, I think she's great. I think Malcolm McDowell is just a transcendent actor. Like that guy could be in The Room and he would be awesome. Like anything, put him in anything and he's great. I actually shared an elevator with Malcolm McDowell at Days of the Dead like a month and a half ago. We're all sitting there waiting to get on the elevator, and he walks up and he's like, "Is this the way to the showroom?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think one of these will take us up there." I was like, "Don't worry, Malcolm. I'll make sure you get on the elevator."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so really, really, yeah, great actor. And you're right. Like, I think he does feel like Loomis. And I like that his Loomis is different in the sequel, that he doesn't like they
Mhm.
really shake it up to where he's like a wannabe celebrity asshole. It's amazing. Oh my God, we got Fatchy back. G Money looking
What up,
fly as
Fatchy?
always.
Thanks,
You know what, guys, we blew right past our membership giveaway. So how about I jump into that really quick before we let Garrett go. Garrett, I don't know if you have to bounce. We can hang out for however long. Usually
Yeah.
I try not to keep people forever, but you are now my prisoner.
We can go another 20. Let's do it.
Cool. All right, let me get this. Let me figure this out. I've never done this before, so there we go. Membership gifting. We're gonna gift 5 memberships, right? Meow. Here we go. Who gets them? Who gets them? Hopefully they're in the chat. Eli Cortez, just wanted to say what's up, Eli. We were in the middle of chatting when you showed up. Garrett, Eli is one of the most incredible dudes that I've met since starting YouTube. This guy has sent me 2 care packages. The first 4 seasons of Tales from the Crypt on DVD and Halloween Ends Steelbook. He sent me Steelbooks for Halloween 2, which is a limited edition, Pumpkinhead, the original Piranha, double Blu-ray of Demons 1 and 2. All of these are still wrapped too. Just an amazing dude, and I always got to shout him out when I can.
My man Eli, he ain't sending me nothing. No, he's a good dude. He's always in my chats.
And then my wife is like, "You're gonna have to get a PO box soon." I was like, "No one cares." And so we've got Robert the Wolfman. Was gifted a membership. We've got Creepin 666. That's a cool screen name. Ooh, T. Parker Evans. Oh yeah, well deserved. Gervais's Unscripted Sports. My bad. And Ben Grimm all gifted memberships. Hell yeah. I think, Robert, are you still in the chat? There you are. There a couple of green hearts. Perfect. Hell yeah, guys. I didn't know I could do that, or else I would have done it sooner.
I don't even know how to do that. That's new to me.
It's, I guess you get 10 a month or whatever. So you go to the $ and you act like it just says membership gifting, just like you would if you wanted to gift on another person's. It's wild. I had no idea. But every now and then I get gifted a random membership, and I'm guessing that's what happens at that
Interesting.
Point. Somebody just wraps that up. Now let's talk a little rest of the year movies. What do you have that you're really looking forward to, as far as, of course, new stuff, but also because you're way more well versed in the physical media world. Is there something coming out in the physical media realm that you're also looking forward to here to wrap up 2024?
Physical media, there's always something. I've been in the physical media game for like over 20 years, and I've never seen it as crazy as it is now. In a time that physical media is like dying at one end of the spectrum, and the other side of the spectrum, it's like as hot as ever. And it's concerning to me in a sense, because I'm like, do they know the end's near and they're just trying to dump everything out, or are they trying to save physical media and being like, hey, let's get more people interested in this kind of stuff? So it's wild, man. It's always something. I've never seen, like, every month all these companies are releasing 4 titles. I mean, it's nuts. But big ones that I already have on pre-order, like You're Next on 4K from Second Sight, Hitcher from Second Sight. That's going to be probably one of the better ones of the year.
Yeah.
Trick or Treat from was supposed to come out, not the Sam one from Arrow, but the other one from Synapse and Red Shirt Pictures. But they promised it would be ready to go by Halloween, but I'm hearing now that it's not going to be ready this year at all. So it's kind of a big bummer, but it's not 100% guaranteed that it's not. But I'm hearing that they're really trying to cram this together to get this out and ready to go. And that was going to be one of my biggest releases of the year for sure. But that's there's a lot of physical media.
That's the metal
one. Yeah. So it seems like it's really, there's a lot to it, and I think it's taken longer than expected, which is kind of a bummer. So, but as far as movies, man, I actually think there's a lot coming out. I don't get a chance to go to the theater much anymore, sadly, so I have to really try to find ways. Like I said, I was going to go to see Trap the other day. It fell through. I'd like to see that. I do want to see Alien, Romulus. I would even like to go see Wolverine, Deadpool, but I don't think that's going to happen. Beetlejuice is coming out. I'll go check that out. I'm even interested in seeing The Crow, even though I heard terrible things. But it seems like there's just a lot coming, which is cool. It's just now I got to just find time to get to the theater and watch it. So yeah, there's even some horror stuff like Cuckoo and all that other stuff that I wouldn't mind checking out, but I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Yeah, there's just so much there's way too much. I feel like I've missed out on a lot just for having to pick and choose. And then, Deadpool and Wolverine, tried to go see it that opening weekend. Couldn't find 2 seats together that weren't in the first 2 rows. And then stuff starts getting spoiled. And then I got like kind of sore about it, to where I was like, well, you know what? If I've already seen pictures of this person and that person and had these things spoiled, I guess I'm just waiting until streaming, because
Yeah.
like, why am I going to go spend like whatever $30 for my wife and I to go see this movie when I've already had like, you know, it wasn't even a week after it had come out and people are like dropping stuff. I'm just like, oh my God.
It's tough, man. You got to stay off this. To be honest, I haven't been spoiled on Deadpool at all, but I don't pay attention. That's the thing. I just scroll because I know that I'm like going to get spoiled.
So this guy that does like comic book, like behind the scene, like, you know, pictures of like David Corn Sweat, like on the set of Superman, stuff like that. He posted this like, what was your favorite cameo or whatever. It's like this big old poll of pictures. And I'm like, I even commented, I was like, dude, this is a real big bummer. Like, this movie's only been out like 5 days. And I like, honestly, I unsubbed, because I'm just like, that's where I draw the line, where I'm just like, sorry, dude, if you're going to do that, like, I ain't down with that. Homie, don't play that.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. I mean, that does suck. But you know what? The crazy world we live in now, it's like, that's the thing. Content is king, right? So like this person's like, well, I might as well, I want to be the first to do this. But as much as it might help in one end, it hurts, I think, in another too. So
I expect that kind of behavior on Twitter, but not on YouTube.
I don't go on Twitter because of that behavior. Yes.
I should probably get rid of it too. I keep on saying this all the time. No one gives a crap what I post on Twitter, because I don't post anything controversial or mean. So nothing I post gets any traction. And
why?
It's tough to get followers on there versus like everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's wild. What did you enjoy Longlegs?
I did. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's probably one of my favorite horror movies of the year. I know this is controversial, but I'm still going to say I think I enjoyed Maxine the best out of everything this year. I thought Late Night with the Devil was another one that was one of my favorites this year as well. But I don't see a lot of stuff. So, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot out there that I missed. Like, I haven't seen Abigail yet. But I liked Longlegs. I think I like slow burn horror movies, so I think it worked. I think the middle kind of got a little dragging for me at one point, but then it kind of made up for it in the end. But yeah, I liked it. Did you check it out?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like that kind of same thing. Like, I don't mind taking time as long as it's going somewhere, and as long as like the mood is there. I thought it was beautifully shot. Like every spot they chose to put the camera was done with deliberation and with purpose, and, you know, to serve the story, especially some of those shots where it's like static shots where you see a bunch of action in the background. Like there's one of the family scenes that they show where you just see the cameras just sitting in like the other room or whatever. So even some of the violence is like technically obscured by like a doorway, and like I'm like, this is the kind of, I don't know, it just does it for me, you know? Not to say that something like Terrifier 3, like I am looking forward to that, but I'm glad that something like Longlegs can still be so effective and, you know, hint at a supernatural element without having to like explain things to where it gets hokey, you know? Like if Shyamalan did Longlegs, they'd probably like explain a whole bunch of stuff at the end and you'd be like, what? Like now I know too much, and it's just like, where's the mystery, you know? No mystique.
They're actually, I see Jamie said Heretic. There's actually a lot of cool stuff coming out, because when I saw Longlegs, they played a lot of trailers, and I was like, wow, like there's like 5 good horror movies that look really interesting that are coming out. I don't remember what they are, but that was one of them.
Yeah, that's the one with Hugh Grant. Is that right?
I don't remember. There was so many that I had just never heard of, and I was like, wow, this looks good. Okay, this one looks good. This one looks good. So there is some stuff on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of Late Night with the Devil, which you had just mentioned, one of the few physical media things I'm getting this year is that big umbrella box that's coming out in September. And I don't ever do that kind of stuff, but this was one of those things where I was like, I have to have it. So when my birthday came around, I was like, Mom and Dad.
You said, listen, I need this TV guide that's in there, please.
It's all about the TV guide. That's really what I'm after. The rest of the stuff's going in the trash. I need the TV guide.
TV guide TV guide was definitely the clincher for me. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, and I'm like,
the TV guide.
I when I started the channel, I did this thing called the Physical Media Show Off Show, and a lot of it was like older comics. Like I have Wolverine #1, and you know I have that old 2004 Dawn of the Dead blue DVD box set that I thought was cool to show off, but a lot of vinyl. And I'm like, this might be a fun way to bring the physical media show-off show back. I don't do that kind of stuff all the time, but an occasion like that umbrella box, and I really enjoyed Late Night with the Devil. I totally get, a lot of people that wanted some more sparks. They wanted it to be a little more flashy. But for me, it was pretty much what I thought it was going to be, I guess. Like a little bit more of a, not like a think piece, but a little bit more of something that felt like it was from the 70s. And it kind of had like I know a lot of people didn't like the ending, but I felt like it was kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like it just like delves into this trippy, like dream-like sort of, what is it? And to me, again, the mystery is part of the fun.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those movies where, like, I only saw it that one time and I really liked it, but I think the more you watch it, I think you're going to find more stuff that you're going to, like, appreciate. I think that's what's going to end up happening with this one.
Yeah, I've seen people do, like, Easter egg videos where they show, like, all sorts of, little flashes of, like, his wife's, vision, like, her ghost or whatever, like, in all sorts of shots that I did not notice when I saw the movie. But the movie was really immersive. Like the whole going from like the 4:3 aspect ratio to the widescreen black and white. I felt like that's one of the things I really like more and more the older I get. I really appreciate a film that like immerses me and brings me into that world. And I felt like Late Night with the Devil did that really well. Same thing with the Long Legs. Like once you see that opening scene and then they go to the credits and the credits are that like red with the black text. I felt like I was being hypnotized during the opening credits. I don't know. And I just felt like
I thought it was great.
Yeah, like the whole world, nothing else matters in the world. Like I'm sucked into this movie. And I think that's one of those things that like, more filmmakers, I would like to just see that kind of aspect, like make me feel like I'm literally stepping into your world, like control my mind for an hour and a half to 2 hours, And speaking of which, Frank says, y'all got to see Oddity. And I've been hearing really good shit about that movie. I've heard a lot of people.
I didn't even know anything about it. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I've seen like a picture, like a single frame, but I've not seen a trailer. I've seen multiple people, though, on YouTube that are like, this is the best horror movie of the year. And I think, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say that the other week when you were on the show? Or I think you said something to that effect. Yeah. And yeah, Umbrella's going to start taking over the physical media world. It does feel like when baseball cards were at their high value and then Magic the Gathering was at its high value in the mid 90s, it's like we are kind of in that era that, I didn't really occur to me until you said that, Garrett, where you're like, do they just know it's the end? They're trying to,
it's wild to see how much shit's getting pumped out on a regular basis. It's insane. And I think Umbrella is a company that's really, really coming into their own. I think the Second Sight is still probably king, but what I like about Umbrella is that I like all the little promo stuff they're giving you, and that Mario set's fantastic. I'm assuming this is going to be just as good as well. All these little things. It's unnecessary for a lot of collectors, but I always say that people like myself who have been collecting for 20 years, like I want to be wowed now. Like I don't want to just take my Scream Factory Blu-ray and then just get the exact same thing but a 4K with a 4K disc. Like I'm kind of over that. Like if you want me to rebuy this movie for the fourth time, like win me over, like give me something special, like wow me please. Like that's what I'm looking for now as a collector. And I think places like Second Sight and Umbrella and even Vinegar Syndrome are doing that, which I can definitely appreciate. And that's what's keeping me kind of going is these bigger editions like that.
Yeah, because even like, there was a time when people were throwing away or just dropping their VHS off at the Goodwill or whatever because they really didn't have value like at that time. So it's interesting as a collector, like the kind. Yeah, and me too. I where's my Orgasmo NC-17 version on VHS?
I still have that.
I don't know. Like I got rid of it. I don't know why. Like I don't know what's wrong with me.
It's because they weren't worth anything and they were taking up space. That's why I got rid of most of mine. It was like I was living at my parents. They were on a huge shelf, and I said, I need to get these DVDs off the floor because I can't walk around my room and get them on the shelf. So then I just pulled everything off that I had on DVD and just sold them.
Yeah.
Because at that time, you could buy them for like 50 cents a piece at like anywhere, like video stores. And then all of a sudden, 2 years go by, these video stores close down, VHS become hot again, and I've regretted it ever since.
VHS is now the vinyl of the movie watching world. When they're putting Terrifier 2 on double VHS, you know that it's, that's the next thing to try to pop through on the physical media. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, even DVDs, because a lot of movies have never had that Blu-ray release or 4K release, so I see a lot of people, sort of bringing the DVD love back for sure.
Oh, I'm definitely one of them. I mean, I think that there's just certain things about, I think, a lot of these older editions that we got, and we get better picture quality and stuff now, but just the love that was put into a lot of these older editions that at one point were very valuable and rare, now we're kind of on that point where it's like, you better get it now, because if this is anything like a VHS is, this thing's going to go up in value or be a little more sought after, where it's kind of at a downslope now. So now's the time to get in on some of this stuff that maybe you always wanted, but you couldn't afford back in the day.
Yeah, it's a good time to get back into it. And I mean, for me, I think I like I said, I live vicariously through your guys' channels, Frank's Media and Reviews, what you do, Christian over at Planet CHH, because there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have all of this. But it makes me feel good to at least like look at it and be like, well, this is really cool. Like there is some of these, they're really scratching an itch there that a lot of us cinephiles have. And yeah, I mean, with that Late Night with the Devil box set and that Mario one, which I actually don't even think that Mario movie's that bad. Maybe
No,
that's a
it's
hot
not.
take.
It's gotten better with age, I think, because I think when it first came out, it was nothing what anybody expected, so everybody was kind of pissed. But now looking back on it, you're kind of like, okay, I can see where they were trying to make this a little bit different. You have a little more, I think, appreciation for it. It's gritty, to have a Mario movie that feels gritty like that, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, they were like, they didn't know what they were doing as far as like how much like the video games could they make it. So they tried to find this like, spot right between. It came out in 93? Is that right? So it came out like, you can't just stick with the old school Nintendo Mario. Like they had to do like the, like the Yoshi kind of thing in there. Like they had to sort of modernize it a little bit because we were in the Super Nintendo era. So yeah, I mean, I'll take all the Bob Hoskins you got. And even Leguizamo, I enjoy quite a bit in that one as well. I really like him in. Kate and I just watched Land of the Dead again the other day. I'm a big like that. Yeah, that he is ridiculously charming in that movie. In fact, a lot of the like, I think that's Romero's like last great movie where the dialogue is just like just on point. And it was a movie I was kind of lukewarm about, but every time I watched it, I was like, I love you more. I love you more.
I appreciate it more now because of what we got afterwards. So like to me, it does feel like his last, it felt like a dead movie. So that's what I kind of appreciate it for. Even though it came out years later, I just appreciate that it felt like he was in the same ballpark as he was in with Day and Dawn.
Yeah, for sure. What's your favorite out of that series?
It's Dawn still. It's always been Dawn. I know a lot of people have really grown a lot of love for Day, which Day's great, but Dawn to me, I mean, you give me zombies, you give me them all, it's cool.
Yeah, Dawn was, man, that movie broke my heart the first time I watched it. It was just, I mean, it's so great, but when Roger gets bitten, I was like, I was sick for the rest of the runtime of the film. I was just, and I'm like, that's when I realized like, man, I think like, Romero at that time was becoming my favorite director because he really found a way to sort of make me feel something and sort of open my eyes to like that. Yeah, his movies can just be entertaining, but then there's also like something deeper that you can find if you want to find that. But they're not too preachy. At least, his first 4 movies or his first 4 dead movies aren't too preachy.
Romero is great. I mean, even when you start looking at some of his not well-known stuff, like I'm a huge fan of Monkey Shines. I'm a big fan of that movie. That doesn't get a lot of love at all. But you look at some of his older stuff and his other stuff, and even a movie called Night Riders, which is I think is really cool that nobody really ever talks about. Different. It's like it's like a medieval times traveling circus or whatever. Like it's a weird concept, but it's fun.
It's almost like Knight Riders is almost like they're trying to do the story of like Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, but they're trying to mix it with like Easy Rider because it has like these really similar vibes. And you know, Ed Harris before he was, it's always really cool to see these actors that they become great, and then you get to see like one of the first movies they did and they had the magic like all the way back then, because he really does carry that movie, which I mean, Tom Savini's really good in it. Isn't Ken Faree in that as well? I believe he is.
I think he is in that one too. But yeah, the two that Ed Harris and Tom Savini are the two ones that stand out to me as like really good roles. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Ken Faree's in that as well.
Because they're like best friends that sort of turn into rivals there in that movie. It's a really cool, interesting dynamic. And then I don't know why, when I was talking about Ed Harris and getting to see a star in their first thing, I just thought of Jennifer Aniston from Leprechaun.
Oh yeah,
because there's something about that first movie. I was like, I had seen it the first time maybe 10 years ago, something like that, and I was like, well, that was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought it was going to be like bad good, but I was like, no, that was actually pretty charming. And Aniston is like, you can tell that she's got it like in that movie. It's just sometimes it's undeniable. Yeah. Do you think she'll come back for a legacy sequel? Oh wait, they already did that.
she ain't coming back to horror movies now.
If there were one last question before we head out here, if there were like a horror franchise that you would want to see have a legacy sequel, or maybe like a horror film that they only made one that you would just like to see some sort of continuation on, what would you pick?
It's a good question. There's probably like 1,000 that I would think, but I'm kind of think off the top of my head. I don't know. Are they doing like I always kind of wanted a sequel for like It Follows, but I think it's getting one, right? Is that what I heard?
They Follow, I think it's going to be 2025, I think.
That was always one. Shocker is another one that I feel like this Pinker was supposed to be Wes's answer to like, hey, this is going to be the new modern Krueger. Like we're gonna take this character, we're gonna build him the same way, and now we're gonna do some movies with him, and let Freddy just kind of sit back and stay. And it never worked out. And I always think that, okay, I got another one. So I'm gonna say Shocker and Brain Scan are the big ones for me. I think that Trickster was such a cool character. I would have loved to see what else they could have done with him. And the same thing with Shocker. I wish it was a series that was turned into at least a couple movies just to kind of see how it ended up being. But I know that's what they wanted. It just didn't end up working out that way.
Yeah, it was that odd era where like the slasher genre was just in this downturn. It was just that, because Shocker must have been like 90. It was 91?
It was got to be 90 or 89. I can't remember, but it's got to be. I wonder if it's on here. No, it's got to be 89 or 90, I think. And then the same thing with Brain Scan. So, Brain Scan was like mid-90s, but I'm surprised neither of those got sequels. It's very surprising to me. And I see someone else did The Burning. I'm surprised that never got a sequel either.
Yeah, that is a pretty surprising one for sure. Yeah, Vanderhoff and Antonis say, The Burning. I still need to see Brain Scan. I've never seen it. I feel terrible.
Again, Brain Scan is one of those movies that I, as a kid, I liked, but the more I watch it, the more I love it. Because watching it now, it brings me back of being a kid of the mid-90s. Like, I feel like it feels so locked into that mid-90s where, again, we were both teenagers, right? So
yeah,
I can relate so much to it now. And then him kind of in his neighborhood, and I'm like, I lived in a neighborhood like that. And then having this cool character like Trickster, and they're introducing computers, and they're adding in like online as like brand new, and they're throwing the discs in there. It's just a lot of it that just really brings me back to a time, and I think that's what really works for me, is that it makes me feel good, like I'm back in like 1995 or whatever. Yeah,
it's an interesting, like, that whole era of kind of ahead of its time as far as like trying to predict like what video games how video games the evolution of video games could lead to something horrific like that. Lawnmower Man was really similar in that way too, like playing with the virtual reality thing and, basically turning this guy into a super genius. And just, it was a time of wonderment, right? Because there was all these technological advances, and we were being told that we were like just on the precipice of these things.
It's weird because it's still really not happen. Like, look at Lawnmower Man and you're like, None of that ever existed, at least in my world. Like,
Yeah.
You know, so it is crazy.
They're like, you're going to be playing, every game is going to be like, you know, like they have the fighting game, the motion capture fighting game at like the big arcades, you know, but they made it seem like, oh, that virtual reality is just going to be like the thing in 1990. By 1997, everyone will be doing it that way. And now it's still like wildly expensive and, you know, all that
for
kind of
real.
stuff.
And it's still not as like far along as I would have expected it to be at this point, you know? Jamie brought up Existenz. Now, did you ever see, like, I just saw this movie like a couple of years ago. Like, I don't know how this passed me by all these years, but Vinegar Syndrome put it out and I bought it and I'm like, this movie's awesome. I don't know how I missed this in 1999. I literally was at the theater like every weekend. So, and it never was anything I ever saw until like last year.
You know, and I've never seen it either, but I remember seeing it at the video store all the time because the artwork on the VHS was just so like striking. Is somebody like, is it Ethan Hawke that's in that, or is there, who am I trying to think of that was on the cover?
In Existenz, it's Jennifer Jason Leigh is in it, and who's the dude?
That's what I'm
maybe Jamie knows who the guy was, but it was a known guy. But yeah, I mean, it had that very late 90s logo with the big X, like you know, like that you'd always see back then, where everything always had a Z at the end, Hardy Boys and all that other stuff. You know, it was always like X's and Z's all over the place.
Yeah, big X and a big Z, and it's Jude Law. That's who it is. Right. And Ian Holm, and that's a Cronenberg movie. Okay, well that kicks it up to a totally different gear because I really enjoy Cronenberg. He's pretty wild. Dead Alive or Bad Taste, anything with Peter Jackson directing horror again. I would love to see him come back to horror. Yeah. Like, and actually direct something. And do something wild like that. Dead Alive is one of my favorite. It's like my second favorite zombie movie of all time. Like, that movie's a laugh riot for sure.
It'd be great to see him back in.
Oh, yeah. It would be so easy for him, too, right? He would only have to work a couple months on it, just knock it right out.
And you think by name value, he could get anybody to take it on, too, you know?
Yeah, he could bring back like a big franchise or just create something totally new. A lot of ambition there, very similar to like what Raimi was doing at the beginning of his career, where it's just like so much ambition on screen, which I think people really love to see, especially in horror, you know. Is that the movie with the tooth gun? All right. Well, now I really got to see it because I don't even know what the hell that means. I'm trying to picture that. I'm like, tooth gun? What is that?
It's
like
hard to explain,
A gun made out of teeth? A gun that shoots teeth? What's going on?
It's like a weird, it's like bones basically, but it's it's a cool concept. It's about video games and futuristic and stuff. So it's a cool movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, damn, we've been talking for a good old hour and a half here, Garrett. This has been so rad having you on the channel. Really appreciate you for, you know, taking your time. I know how busy everything can get with life and YouTube and everything, and really appreciate you making an appearance here on the show. It was awesome collaborating with you and Cody and Foz doing our Movie Punks versus Rad Dudes. If you guys have not checked that video out, you gotta go check it out over on Garrett's channel. I've also dropped links in the description below for the YouTube, the Instagram, and then the link tree if you want to find everything else. There's a whole bunch of great merch that Garrett's got out there. I think you've mentioned it a couple times where you're doing like, there's like some sort of trial where the merch is even popping up right on the front page of your channel, right?
So a lot of the, you know, people have stores on TeePublic, and TeePublic was not integrated with YouTube, so you always had to kind of like have a separate link. Well, now they're integrating, and I get an email from them saying like, you know, you were one of 300 YouTubers with a store that we want to try this. So if you go on my page and you're watching my videos now, at the underneath you'll see all the different designs of either t-shirts and hats and all this other stuff, and then it's an easy just click of away if it's anything you want to check out in the store instead of having to like have a separate link. So it's cool because then you as you're watching, you can scroll through and see the different designs and stuff like that right there. So that's cool. And again, it's brand is important. So definitely go check out the stuff. If you liked what we talked about here today, go check that out. And like you said, if you want to even start with the high school thriller video that I did with Davey and Foz, go check that one out and see what you guys like. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the that Michael Myers mask video was amazing. I
You
had
guys gotta
no
watch
idea
that.
that existed. I had no I don't want to say it right now. I'm sure a lot of maybe some of you have already seen it, but man, I had no idea that mask existed. It cracks me up. And I absolutely love it. Like it's one of my favorite Michael Myers masks.
When
And
I
I'm
saw that
jealous,
thing,
Garrett.
my jaw dropped, and I was like, I gotta get this because it just fits so well. And yeah, definitely go check that video out for sure, because I don't do a lot of mask videos because I don't get a lot. But this one I
Mhm.
had to have, and you may see him on the show featured every once in a while. So
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Garrett. I hope you have a great rest of your night. We'll catch you on your channel. And yeah, man, be well. And thank you so much.
thank you, man.
Take care.